Welcome, welcome, welcome to the 25th episode of the podcast, where we're going to be chatting with Moonstar today about Demi Pride. I also have some very exciting news to announce. The video that I've been working on in regards to what Ace and Arrow Pride looks like for different folks, based on the answers that people have been giving in these podcasts the last little while, is finally out on YouTube. You can watch it taking a look at the pinned comment or by typing !pride video, or by going to the Aceback podcast YouTube and watching it that way. Very excited. Sort of summarizes and highlights all the wonderful ways that people express Ace and Arrow Pride. And I can't wait for you to let me know what you think about it and what Ace and Arrow Pride looks like for you. On that note, I'm Ty-E-Y-E, NBA Arrow Ace Spec, PhD student by day, and a content creator by night with a huge focus on Ace and Arrow advocacy. And today we are chatting with Moonstar. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I am Moon. I go by she/any pronouns, and I stream a lot of different things, mostly singing, dancing, and art. All three of my loves. So, yeah.
Awesome. Moon's also a fellow member of the Spoon Platoon.
Yes.
Which uplifts disabled content creators. And Caber and Quartzy was the one to create the Spoon Platoon, but Caber, who's been featured on the podcast as well, has been very involved in that as well. We love our Spoon Platooners. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's chat a little bit about Ace and Demi Pride. So, I start usually by talking about how Aceback identities can be very difficult to pinpoint for many folks, owing to the fact that it can often be difficult to identify and a lack of attraction without context. Many folks, as they're coming to understand their identity, mistake things like aesthetic attraction, tertiary attraction, and other kinds of attraction for sexual attraction, especially when we're told from everybody all around us from the time we're like 4 years old, you are going to find somebody, you're going to get married with them, you're going to have kids, it's going to be all sorts of fun. And then you're like, but that's not me. How easy was it for you to come to the realization that you're Demi?
It was long process for me, because I thought at first I was asexual, and then I learned what demisexual was, and I was like, oh, this seems more like me. And then after that, it took me maybe 2 years to read more about demi-romantic, and like, oh, I'm that too. Okay, so yeah, I am both demisexual and demi-romantic. It just took me so long to research and see what it entails, and yeah, I was, I think, 19 or 20 when I fully realized that I'm Demi. So, yeah.
It takes time. It really does. And, I also want to remind you that Demi is very much part of the ace spectrum. And if, for folks who do identify with the Demi label, you are fucking valid and you are ace enough. I know there's been a lot of horrible things said lately in the social media world about ace erasure. You are ace enough. There is no gold star ace. There's no one ace that's better than any other ace. We are all ace. We just experience that asexuality a little differently, as I like to talk about time and time again on this podcast. Had to interject there and remind folks that you are fucking awesome and you are ace enough.
Yes. Of course. Yes. Valid. Everyone's very valid.
So, what sort of resources and communities were helpful for you to come to better understand your own identity?
It's been a while. I think it was like Google, but also like Discord was a big help, like for me to find my community, find people who are like me, like in the ace spectrum, But yeah, also YouTube helped.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, TikTok helped too. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's some really great resources out there. As I've said many times before, Ace Tumblr did not enter my world until much later. I'm a little bit older of an ace here, approaching that 40-year mark. So Ace Tumblr did not exist until a little later for me. And I didn't really come across it until 2018, 2019, I would say, when I was really starting to grapple with my own ace and later arrow identity. But there's some really awesome YouTubers out there. Lynn Saga, Ace Dad Advice, Fluently Ace Spec, so many others that do some amazing work. So yeah, YouTube's great. One of the reasons I started this podcast is I don't see this space on Twitch though.
Yes, I agree. There's not enough ace people out there or fall in the ace spectrum or arrow spectrum on Twitch.
Exactly. Absolutely. It seems to be missing for whatever reason. And so I was like, why not create this space? And I think it's really helped to bring community together through the podcast. And I'm really, really excited and happy that, this has brought folks together, helped folks learn about their own identities, learn things they may not ever thought about before.
Yeah. It's very amazing idea that you came up with. And it's very fun.
That is so true. Yeah, that's why I do it. If it wasn't fun, I wouldn't be doing it. But I absolutely love doing this. So, asexuality is often called the invisible orientation, a phrase coined by Julia Sandra Decker in her book, The Invisible Orientation, in 2014. I would also argue that aromanticism faces many, many similar challenges as well. Erasure of aspec identities is so common. Erasure of demisexuality. Don't get me started on
Mhm.
that.
Yes.
The recent bullshit, sorry to say, on social media about the I don't know if folks have seen it, but unfortunately there was a post made where somebody said actually asexual, and they made a post where they said this is asexuality, this is gray sexuality, fuck you if you're gray sexual. Essentially, it was like, these aces are
Oh.
better because they're the gold star aces, and these
Oh
folks
my
are gray, so they're not as ace. And myself and so many others were like, no, you are wrong. This is a
Exactly.
this is a spectrum. There is no one way to be
Mhm.
better, a better ace than any other ace. Y'all are asexual. You just experience it slightly differently. So I did need to bring that up because it's been in the news, it's been in the YouTubes, it's been on the socials lately.
Yes. Queer sexuality is so misunderstood. So misunderstood. Sexuality in the A spectrum.
Creating that false division really hurts everyone.
Mm-hmm.
We already, as an A-spec community, face so much erasure, face so much misunderstanding. This sort of stuff just makes it that much worse. It just adds to the erasure.
Exactly. 100%.
So, media representation is another way where, erasure and a lot of misconceptions happens. Most of the limited ace representation in media we've talked about many, many times is white, is sex repulsed.
Yes.
It doesn't include the wide spectrum of experiences that encompass asexuality. It doesn't include BIPOC representation. So, as folks are growing up, as folks are coming to understand their identity, how do you find yourself represented in the media if all you see is sex repulsed white aces?
As someone that is, um, I forgot the term of it. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Um, biracial. There you go. Um, BIPOC. Um, BIPOC myself.
Absolutely.
My friend is yelling at me
I heard.
BIPOC in the neighborhood twice. But yes, BIPOC. Um, I I don't like I you know I it's very hard to um to see like myself in like those people, and also I am sex repulsed um extremely, and sometimes I'm not. It's like a wave, it comes and goes. But yeah, like you don't really see that many demisexual characters in media in general, I would say. At least I haven't seen that many demisexual characters. Just like headcanon demisexuals that are
Absolutely.
a better web than actual canon ace.
Absolutely.
spectrum
The
people.
headcanon aces are what we have to rely on because
Yeah.
the, canonical ace rep is just so limited. And as Hugster Duke said, all he knows of is the sex repulsed aces. Sex favorable aces don't exist. Sex averse ones don't exist. Sex indifferent ones like myself don't exist in
Yeah.
mainstream media.
Exactly. Um, I think there should be more, especially a romantic characters,
Oh yeah,
demi-romantic characters. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. But
Aromantic
shows.
is just
Oh, go ahead.
so limited, even more so than asexuality.
Hmm.
And when it does show up, it always shows up in the form of arrow ace representation,
Exactly.
as if that's the only way to be aromantic. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
aromanticism gets even less coverage, and it's often covered in a very negative way. The characters are robotic, the characters are antisocial.
Yes.
Aromantic folks, while some may be aplatonic, it's a small percentage. Most of the arrow folks I know love social situations, have a community around them, like me. It is not about not wanting to be social. What it's about is not experiencing romantic attraction. Those two things are different. So how has this invisibility and the erasure connected to media representation, the bullshit you see on social media around what we just talked about? How has this impacted your journey?
I honestly, I wish I knew about demisexual and demi-romantic sooner, because basically my whole life I've been like, I felt like empty, if that makes sense, like empty inside, because like I didn't know why I don't feel that way romantically or sexually. Um, and I'm thankful that I learned it like 19, but I wish it was sooner because like media doesn't want, like, a lot of social media kind of like is not always, but like a lot of times, very romanticized and sexualized a lot of times, and like there's not it. The community is like big, but you don't see it in a lot of things. It doesn't show up like on Beck, on like YouTube. You have to look it up, and um on TikTok too a lot of times. Um um or any social media. Especially aromantic. I wish that I learned at the same time my demisexual and a demi romantic at the same time. But like, it seems like a romantic um is less talked about on media than uh asexual.
Absolutely agree with that.
So,
There have been
yeah.
some fantastic folks that have, advocated around asexuality. You got Avon, you got Yasmin Benoit, all have
Mhm.
started to finally push asexuality into the like very surface level of mainstream recognition. The same thing has not happened for aromanticism. Yes,
Mhm.
Yasmin Benoit is Arrow Ace. She does talk about her aromantic experiences, but a lot of her advocacy work is understandably around asexuality and pushing for
Mm-hmm.
governments to recognize it as a valid, legalized sexual orientation that will actually provide protection against folks experiencing erasure, against
Yeah.
experiencing discrimination. So I understand why her focus has been so heavily on asexuality. It makes complete sense. But there's nobody that's sort of done the same for aromanticism.
Mm-hmm.
So, it just sort of falls through the cracks in many ways, and it doesn't get the same level of discussion. And so many folks, as a result, will either conflate asexuality and aromanticism or have no idea at all what it means to be aromantic. So completely agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
The Aromantic Spectrum Union for Recognition, Education, and Advocacy, AUREA, which is like the aromantic equivalent of AVEN, finally reached 501 not for profit status last year, and that's really exciting because that's going to allow AUREA to actually start to really do more to advance aromantic rights. But we're just starting to see that now. The Arrow flag only came out in the last 7 years. So, aromanticism just going to need a little bit more time, unfortunately, for folks to really get any sort of understanding of it, at the mainstream level. But I do want to remind folks of one thing, all right? I'm going to play a little clip, and just remember, you are valid. You are not broken. Listen to the wise words of Glass's journal here.
Should know, obviously, that you're not a broken individual. You haven't made a mistake or anything like that. It's you. That's just who you are. And that's okay if that's what's who you are, because you're still a wonderful and beautiful person at the end of the day, no matter how you identify as, and fuck what society has to say about you. You're allowed to live your life how you want to live.
And I think that clip right there is a fantastic reminder. You aren't broken. You are valid. And that's why I ended the video with that clip from Glass's journal, because that right there is what I think so many people needed to hear growing up when they were grasping or grappling with this feeling that something was wrong with them, and that they couldn't understand why they didn't experience the same attraction that everybody else did. You're not broken. You just have a different experience. You have a different sexual orientation, a different romantic orientation, and that is perfectly okay. You are valid. I want you to remember that. But it's not easy because society tells you all the time, you just haven't found the right person yet. You will get there. But for us, no, we won't. And that's perfectly okay. But society won't listen to us. And building on that, asexuality, aromanticism are so often, so greatly misunderstood. What are some of the most frustrating misconceptions that you've come across, that you've experienced?
Okay. Oh, like, you haven't had sex, so how would you know how you feel about it? It's a big one that probably a lot of people could understand, like, the angle behind how I felt behind that. It's like, I know how I feel. I don't like, like maybe one day if I meet the right person, like of course I want to have that, experience. Um but it is like you don't have to have sex with someone to understand your feelings, Like a lot of people, know that they're bisexual, pansexual, lesbian without even kissing anyone of the same
Exactly.
gender, So why would you expect ace and like ace people to explain themselves in that way?
That right there is such a great answer. Folks
Yeah,
understand that you can identify your sexual orientation without ever having sex. Folks who are,
exactly.
you know, MLM, folks that are lesbian, folks who are bi, have figured it out. Many without ever
Mhm.
having sex, before ever having sex. Why is it any
Yeah,
different for ace folks? And asexuality is not about whether you're willing to have sex. That's not at all what it is. It's about, do I feel sexual attraction?
yeah,
There are many ace folks who do have sex, and that has nothing to
exactly.
do with their sexual orientation. They can have sex for a
Mhm.
multitude of reasons, and it doesn't make them any less ace.
Exactly. Maybe they feel comfortable with their partner enough to do that, Their partner knows that they're ace, so they both are in agreement, or it could be any reason. I don't
Exactly.
like I don't yeah. Um I haven't really had any uh understate like misunderstoodment, for a romantic being demi romantic. Because I haven't really talked about it that much. Um Cause yeah, I still figuring things out um on that side, but the demisexual one, it's like I don't need to understand. I don't need to um explain myself why I feel that way. It's
Folks
also
feel.
it was my mom. It was my mom that said that to me. And I try to explain. The best way I can. Even my sister got involved, and yeah, um, my sister trying to explain things. But yeah, sometimes just goes over people's heads, and yeah.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, I've experienced this many times. Folks seem to have this idea that it's perfectly okay to be ask really gross, invasive questions about your
Mhm.
sex life because you're ace. What gives you that right to ask somebody that
Exactly.
just because you think they're ace or they've told you they're ace? Would you ask
Mhm.
that to the person next door? No, you wouldn't. So why would you ask it to them?
Exactly. It just pisses me off. Oh, and also another thing, it doesn't happen to me, but other people in the spectrum is oh, like why would who is sex repulsed, It's why sex repulsed? Did anything happen to you sexually, in that way to give you, sex repulse? No. I just don't like the idea of that,
Exactly.
and doesn't it doesn't mean that I have trauma with sex. It just means that I don't like the idea of it.
And that
You
is
know?
so fucking valid.
Yeah. I'm very passionate about this.
Absolutely. There's so much to talk about because there's so many misconceptions, and even within the queer community as a whole, there's a lot of folks that don't really have an understanding of what the diversity is like under the ACE, under the Arrow umbrellas.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to have these discussions, not only within the ACE community itself, but more broadly, so that folks have a better understanding of what asexuality and what aromanticism really are. Hugster Duke mentioned a passenger on the raid train pointed out to me there are actually asexuals who do enjoy sex, and for him, he had not come across that before. And that is so common because of the fact that, media only ever talks about the sex repulsed aces, that one very limited set of experiences.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful for that raid train happening, because if it wasn't for that raid train, I wouldn't have met this wonderful group of folks who have, many of whom have now appeared on the podcast, talked about their experiences, and, helped bring some of these really important discussions forward on Twitch, where, I had not seen it until the raid train, had not seen it done in any great degree of detail ever before until the raid train last year, until the podcast. So, I want to circle back to media representation a little bit and get your thoughts on, what are some of your favorite representations in media, in TV, in movies, if you can think of any?
I I can't think of any, but I think the closest one that I love is at oh my gosh, why can't I not remember his name? Hold on, I have to Google it. Essex from Critical Role, Campaign 2. I really enjoy his character a lot. And actually felt kind of like seen by him. It's like, oh, I feel the same way. Like it's very nice. But yeah, besides that, I don't know.
And it's very common to struggle to come up with really great representation that speaks to you. And that's because it's so limited, so biased towards one experience, the white ace who's sex repulsed. And if you don't have that experience, it's not going to speak to you.
Exactly. Also, Keyleth from Critical Role, Campaign 1. Also, I felt very seen with that character in general, but in that instant too, like I felt seen.
That's awesome. I actually am not super familiar with Critical Role. I will have to make a note. I will
Yeah,
have to make a note to look that up.
yeah. it's a very fun D&D show on the internet. But yeah,
The Venn
um,
diagram between D&D and the queer community is almost an entire overlap. It's the number of people I know in the queer community that are somehow involved in D&D is it's so many.
yes. My two uncles that are like married, they both are very interested in playing D&D. I'm like, oh, I'm a DM, so I'm gonna run a game for them. So yeah, very excited to see if they like it. So yeah, it is so overlappy.
Absolutely. And I'm just reading what Hugster Duke mentioned. Uh, so few people talk about Two Spirit. And you know, it's
Yes.
not my place to talk about because it is a
Mhm.
indigenous identity. But there are some great books out there that talk about it. It's starting to be talked about, but so few people actually understand what it means outside of, you know, small group of communities. Let me see. Let me see if I can look up any good resources to recommend. This Two Spirit community deserves so much more representation than it gets.
Yes.
So yeah, I will try to dig up some books that I've read recently and share them in the chat. But also, yeah, aromanticism. Not many people really understand what it means to be aromantic.
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
let me dig up some of those books. What about books? Do you have any favorite books, either fiction or nonfiction, around asexuality or aromanticism that speak to you? While I dig up some
Um,
of the books here.
I don't really read that much anymore. When I used to, I only read space and animal books when I was younger, and I tried to copy them on a piece of paper for some reason, and I got in trouble by my teachers doing that. I'm like, hey, I mean, I'm writing it down for learning purposes and taking it back home and reading it. Um, but yeah, and also space and the queer community goes hand in hand also, which is very interesting. Um, but yeah, I don't really read that many books anymore, or at all. I'm trying to. I'm trying to. Um, but yeah.
That is so valid. I basically focus these days mostly on audiobooks because I spend all day looking at a computer screen, reading electronic media all day, and the last thing I want to do is read more
Mm,
when I go home at
yeah.
night. So I often listen to audiobooks instead. But I recently read this book, A Two Spirit Journey, the autobiography of a lesbian Ojibwe Cree elder by Mani Chakabi. Fantastic book.
Ooh,
Highly recommend it.
okay.
So it talks about their experience growing up in northern Manitoba and northern Ontario and the challenges growing up, you know, 60, 70 years ago not only as First Nations, but as Two-Spirit First Nations in Canada in, the mid 20th century, and how Mani Chakabi comes to be in the very first gay pride parade in Thunder Bay in 2013. Fantastic read. Many content warnings around abuse and alcoholism and many things that unfortunately so many First Nations in Canada have experienced. Residential schools, so many content warnings, but an absolutely must read, I think, for anyone. So that one, and then I'll try to dig up some other good ones to recommend, but off the top of my head, that one I highly, highly recommend. The ones that I usually talk about, my favorite books, I recently just got this book. It just arrived on Friday. Love Expanded: How Asexuals and Aromantics Are Redefining Love, Life, and Family. Very excited to read that. I tend to focus mostly on nonfiction books because I find it's very difficult for me to immerse myself in fiction and suspend disbelief. So most of my books are nonfiction. Talk all the time about Refusing Compulsory Sexuality by Sharonda J. Brown. There's many others as well, but those are my favorites that I recommend around asexuality, around aromanticism. Turning to amatonormativity. Yeah. All right, let me grab that. Did you DM it to me now? Oh yeah, I see it on Twitch. Thank you. So here's a post on Two-Spirit identity. So I'll share that, and then I'll see if I can dig up some other resources as well. So talking a little bit about amatonormativity and allonormativity now. So amatonormativity is a term that Elizabeth Brake, in her book Minimizing Marriage, Marriage Morality, and the Law in 2011 coined. And this is the assumption that everyone desires to be in a coupled, romantic, monogamous relationship. It's the relationship escalator. You are going to grow up. You're going to find somebody. You're going to become, because it's cis heteronormative, right? That's the assumption. You're going to find a boyfriend. You're going to find a girlfriend. You're going to get married. You're going to have kids. You're going to have the white picket fence. That is amatonormativity. Allonormativity is the assumption that everybody is allosexual. They experience sexual attraction. And they desire to be in a sexual relationship. Building on these themes of allonormativity and amatonormativity, how does your lived experience as an ace, as a demi person, as a demi-romantic individual, influenced the relationships that you've been in? These can be platonic, these can be queer platonic, these can be more typical relationship, doesn't matter. How has your lived experience as a demi ace, as a demi romantic individual influenced the relationships that you've been in?
That's a good question. um, Honestly, I feel more closer to the relationships that I do have because of it. Because, like, you know, platonically, or yeah, just platonically, um, I feel so much closer to my friends because I could talk about these things to them. And yeah, like, if one day I will be in a relationship, I could talk to them about it and feel closer to them. And while doing that, feeling a lot close to them, maybe I will do something like, sexual. I don't know. Um, so, also, I'm a very talkative person in general. So, me being able to talk about um, my demisexual and demi-romanticness really helped me to, one, more understand myself and to communicate that to the people that I love, and feel more connected to them and them to me. So it's a win-win situation.
Such a great answer. You are so valid and so right about that. I've definitely come to learn a lot about, my own experiences with, the relationships I've had in my life because of my lived experiences. And then conversely, I've also come to learn a lot about my own identity through the relationships that I've been in. So it goes the other way as well. What have you learned about yourself from being in those relationships?
That I am, like, more confident now and loved because they understand, like, who I am. It's like a puzzle piece, like, being finished for the first time. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's such a pretty puzzle. That's, you know yeah, I don't know. But, like, it's, yeah, I feel more loved and feel more seen. There you go, seen and heard when I talk about these things, and people who I've talked to about these things finally see me, and yeah, yeah.
So valid. So valid. And I've talked about it, before on the podcast, how it really was through the one relationship I had attempted to try to be in that I learned about my aromanticism, that I really learned that I don't experience romantic attraction. It was through that
Hmm.
relationship and the struggles that I experienced through it that I came to really retrospectively look at it and say, hey, wait a minute. I never really experienced what I thought romantic attraction was.
Hmm.
And it
Going
sort of helped clarify a lot of things for me.
Exactly. I have had the same experience. A couple of years ago, I was in this relationship, if you want to call it that. um, and he he wanted a polyamory or open um relationship, and I'm like, okay, I have a person in mind, um and yeah, I felt more like connected with that person than that guy. He did some weird things, and also he said "I love you" so quickly. It tends to happen to me, and I'm like, I feel pressure to say "I love you" back. Like
Yeah.
every time that happened to me, so I'm like going back to my Demi romanticness. That made me learn that like maybe I don't actually love that person in the way that I think I perceive love. You know. Um, so yeah, like I need to not feel pressure to say I love you to someone, basically, because I need to be connected with someone, you know, strongly before I say I love you or do anything like that.
So valid. And it can be really difficult for folks to figure out what that means for them.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was for me, because as you said, you felt pressured. I definitely felt pressured in that relationship to say it back to them, even though something inside of me felt like something just wasn't quite right. I felt pressured to say it back to them.
Exactly. Yes.
And it wasn't until retrospectively looking back on everything that, the aromanticism really started to make sense for me. We are coming up to the 1 hour mark. We will be um, needing to uh, deal with an ad fairly soon here. Um, what what I want to propose is two things. One, do we um, run a very short ad to buy us a little bit of extra time, and uh, then try to finish the podcast like quickly, or do we want to take a little bit more of a break and then come back after the ad break and talk about Ace and Arrow Pride? What would you like to do?
Um, Want a short little ad.
Sounds good. Actually, here we go. Ad break is starting in 2 minutes. So let's take a break here. We'll take a break for about 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about Ace and Arrow Pride. Does that sound good?
Yes.
All right. So be back in about 5 minutes or so. See you on the other side. Welcome back, folks. We are going to chat about Demi Pride and what pride means to you. So I'm going to ask, what does demisexual, demi-romantic pride mean for you, Moonstar?
Um, Honestly, um, a lot to me, first off, and also demisexual like pride means like to fully like to learn fully about it, and also learning more about myself is super fun, obviously. And demi romantic also means the world to me. Like finally I know like why I never felt that kind of love before, And maybe I have one day before, I don't know. But it's just like learning about like certain things I've done or like felt like before, and putting like a word for it, is a lot helpful for me. And labels are not for everybody, and that's very valid too. And but I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it does.
But yeah.
There's no one way
Yeah.
to experience pride, and pride means so many different things. Learning about your identity, being accepting of your identity, and how it fits in your lived experience. That is pride. That's enough. And that is valid. So I think
Yeah.
it does make sense.
Yeah. Like finding people that are the like demisexual, deromantic, being friends with some of them.
Folks that
Or in
understand
any
your lived experience. Exactly.
yeah. It's very, very fun.
Absolutely. Finding the Ace and Arrow communities locally in Toronto has been so wonderful for me because I've found a group of folks who can understand, the challenges that I've experienced, that, share a common language around that lived experience. So I totally understand.
Yeah. Also, hopefully there would be more demisexual, demi-romantic characters in media one day.
I would love that. There are not enough.
Yeah. Also, gray sexual
Hell yeah.
characters, gray
Hell yeah.
romantic, or
Exactly.
anyone in the ace spectrum.
There needs to be more
Really.
diversity within the Ace
Yeah.
and Arrow spectrums in media.
Yes.
I've been talking about that since the podcast began, and I won't stop talking about it for a long time yet. So,
Yes.
completely agree on that one. So, at this point, I think it brings us to the end of the questions that I had created. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet?
Yeah. Basically, like, if anyone's listening that is not ace or arrow, in those communities or spectrum, like, just sit and listen. Don't like say mean things, or just sit and listen and try to understand the best that you can about what people what people are talking about, because like it's a valid sexuality, and like everybody's valid in how they feel about certain things, and don't tease, don't like be mean and cruel to them because they don't like the same things that you like. It's kind of ridiculous, honestly.
Nobody can
But
tell you your own lived experience. Your lived
exactly.
experience can only be defined by you. Don't
Mhm.
dismiss someone's lived experience because you don't understand it.
Exactly.
That just leads
And
to erasure. That just leads to harm.
exactly. And if there's anyone that writes books or shows or movies who's watching this, hey, maybe read up some demi-romantic, what that means, or interview people who are
Or better yet,
demi-romantic.
have somebody bring on
Yes,
somebody who has that lived experience to
exactly.
help provide context, to help
Yeah.
develop a character that can bring life to these experiences.
Mm-hmm. Not just white people,
No,
Just don't bring white
we
people
need more
into.
BIPOC representation.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Honestly, if anyone that makes music and you all Ace or Arrow, like, keep it up. Because people need to know about us more, Like,
Mick, who was on previously on episode 24, fellow Arrow Ace, is actually learning, to be a musician, Z self. And Z is, I'm very excited to see Z's music.
yes. I'm very excited to see it. Also, whoever is playing, D&D live, obviously, they don't want to, say what people should do off stream, by themselves playing a game. But if anyone has games that are live or post on YouTube or anything, please maybe make Arrow and Ace characters the best that you can, show the web and D&D games.
Create space for them. Absolutely.
Yes. Exactly. Also BIPOC, make them BIPOC. Or bring BIPOC people in your games too. Or Ace and Arrow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
More representation is what we need. More diversity is what we need.
I would love to see a BIPOC elf.
Hell yeah.
A druid
that would be amazing.
Demisexual, any Ace, in any Ace spectrum. I would love to see that.
I agree. Completely agree.
Yeah, a tiefling. That'd be sick.
I love what Pseudo-Suga mentioned. Hard for me not to make them Ace and Arrow. Well, hell yeah. We need those characters.
It's hard for me to make any of my characters straight. Like, most of my characters are queer as... Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And, BIPOC too.
Absolutely.
A handful of them are, BIPOC. But yeah. Also try to make characters that are like different sexualities and different romantic, research things and see. So yeah.
Also, for character development, don't focus the entire character around their sexuality, around their romantic orientation. Don't make it a 1D flat character. Give it some life. Don't have that be their only characteristic.
Exactly.
A character can happen to be Ace, but be a whole bunch of more things. Because in real life, that's what I am. I happen to be Ace. I happen to be Arrow. But I'm a whole lot more than that.
Straight is boring.
Mood.
No
really
offense.
Is.
Yes. Honestly, yes. I always joke that my parents are boring. Obviously, I'm joking. But it's just, straight people, But obviously, I'm joking. Joking.
Yeah, for sure. So,
but yeah.
I think at this point, do you want to go on a raid?
Ooh, yes.
Let's raid the Fruities raid train.